Hello and welcome to the Unbundled Attorney Mastermind Podcast. My name is Dave Aarons and I'm the founder and CEO of Unbundled Attorney. In this podcast, we interview our unbundled attorneys, as well as the leading experts in the industry, to identify the best practices for converting leads into paying clients and how to ethically and profitably deliver unbundled legal services and other affordable options in your practice. To learn more about how our exclusive unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com. I'm really glad you guys could join us today. I mean, the context for our conversation, this fireside chat, is to really unpack how it is that you've been able to have so much success in terms of the conversion process with your bankruptcy clients all across the state. That's not an easy task, and to be able to have over half of your leads. I mean, we did the math on it last time, and conservatively, we said half, and sometimes you're doing 2/3. When I looked at the numbers from your most recent call, it was, in that 2/3 realm. So it's been fantastic to see you're able to get, because the end result of that is you're acquiring bankruptcy clients for, $300, something like that or so, which is great from a margin and so forth. So before we get into that today, why don't we talk just a little bit about, a little bit about your background, how you got started in the practice of law, and why you guys ended up leaning towards bankruptcy.
Okay, if you really want to know, I started my career as a professional actor, singer, and a dancer in New York City. I was a stand-up comic for about 7 years. I loved entertaining people. I love people. It's one of the assets that makes it possible for me to close as many of the leads as I do. And I thought that was where I was going to be, somewhere involved in theater, doing all of the things that I used to do. And it wasn't until I became successful at that and I was getting booked in lots of different commercials and I was doing a different show every night, I realized I was kind of disappointed and miserable with that career. And I wanted something a little bit more rewarding. So after about 10 years of pounding the pavement in New York City, I switched. And you're probably expecting I went into law, but no, I went into comparative religion and I started teaching. I taught at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And then I was TAing over at Barnard, and I had a great civil rights and religious studies syllabus that I presented into their class. That was one of my favorite things that I got to teach, and that was I love teaching. So a wonderful experience. In fact, I do teach bankruptcy at the Connecticut Bar Association on occasion, and I publish in the Connecticut Attorney's magazine every once in a while. But the ivory tower of scholasticism soon soured on me as well because it's incredibly political and they want you to basically walk the line and do what they say. And you don't really have as much freedom as I need in my life, in my career. So a friend of mine, his name was Alfredo Vargas. He was a Nicaraguan immigrant, had been in this country for about 48 years as an undocumented immigrant. He was involved in this horrendous case where these two people, these traveling grifters, I should say, came to town, went to the synagogue, and they would go from Catholic church to Jewish synagogue, and they would accuse the wealthiest family's youngest child of sexually molesting one of their 6 children. And there were no children in the synagogue at all because it was the oldest synagogue in Bridgeport, and the average age was about 85. And Alfredo was the caretaker, and he cared for the community and he cared for everybody. And they decided he'd be a perfect person to pin this on. And he went to trial, and nobody in the congregation or anybody really knew about it until after he was already found guilty and sitting in jail. The judge in the matter was the former employer of the little girl's father, never recused himself or made that aware. And I found out about this afterwards when my father and a couple other people who had known this couple from other towns that this had happened in got their money together, hired a brilliant criminal defense attorney named Robert Burke, and they got an appeal. And 24 minutes later, there was an acquittal, and my friend was exonerated. And I had switched my career path and gone to law school during this happening so I could work on that and then be able to bring the civil case against the parents of this little girl, which I did. And I found 14 families up and down the eastern seaboard that all had similar cases. 7 of those families were willing to bring, affidavits in and be part of the case. And that's why I became an attorney. So I'm grateful that I have a story like that that reminds me why I got into this industry and this business, even though I'm in a totally different area and a totally different world than I ever thought that I would be. Once I was in, I figured, okay, I think I want to be useful. I'm going to do divorce mediation since I I'm not a big fan of the divorce law industry for the most part. I thought this was a way to help people save money and try to work through some issues civilly and, with a little bit more aplomb. But
Mm.
I'll tell you, I've worked in almost every single aspect of our industry, and the only place where I have really found sincere and legitimate gratitude, for the most part, has been in the bankruptcy world. And it's not just one or a few clients; it's every one of my clients is sincerely grateful for what we did, what we labored to do, and what we do afterwards to help get them back on their feet. And I really, really appreciate that about them because I need to be appreciated too. I was telling my wife earlier when we were talking about our two sons, our teenage sons. If you've got teenagers, I don't need to say anymore. You already know. So,
Hmm.
bankruptcy, I got into bankruptcy because 2 years into practice, I'd been working at a personal injury mill on Wall Street in New York. I wanted to get back to Connecticut. My father had gotten a little bit sick, and I wanted to be home to make sure he was okay. I started taking a couple interviews, and I interviewed actually with the gentleman who would have been sitting directly at this desk right now. But it's now my desk. He sat me across from him, and he said, "Max, where do you see yourself in 10 years?" I said, "Sitting at your desk, Dan." And it took me about 8 years before I bought the building and got the firm and created my own little island. And he moved out and 2 buildings over into a basement, sucking up dust bunnies until he passed away about a month or so ago. Really, he got me my start though, so I'm grateful. He said, "Max, you're going to be a bankruptcy attorney." I said, "Why?" He says, "We need a bankruptcy attorney." And I said, "I
Well,
don't
there you
know
have
if
it.
this
Yeah.
is I don't know if this
Hmm.
is going to work for me." I said, "I'll try it out." And he really did. His choice of clientele was very indicative of his entire practice. And it's funny that I'm thinking about it now because I realize I am very careful in who I choose to work with in bankruptcy. And I would have thought that Unbundled might have changed some of that in regards to, you want to cast a wider net, you want to bring in as much as you can, but there's still room to be able to make sure that it's a good fit, socially and ethically. Um, and when I was working for somebody else, it wasn't my fit. It wasn't my choice. And I represented a lot of people in bankruptcy who, you know, they were a very different type of client. I was successful at it. I was good at it. And I basically learned trial by fire. It wasn't like I had anybody really there to train me. So I learned on the job, sink or swim. I went out on my own about 2 years after I started with Dan. And the first thing I did was I said, bankruptcy is where I have a lot of my knowledge. And I was lucky. I got in right around 2003, 2004, before the law changed, when the BAPCPA passed in October 15th of 2005. It was a huge game changer. And honestly, I don't know that I would still be a bankruptcy attorney or as successful if it wasn't for that happening and turning the world upside down. A lot of attorneys here who remember that probably also remember a huge portion of the bankruptcy bar at that time just saying, throw my hands up, push my chair away from the desk. This is too much liability and this isn't something I want to learn. I'm going to either retire or do something else. And so that's pretty much a lot of people did that in Connecticut. And I inherited a great deal of business, and I was out there in the streets just, making myself heard and bringing in business. And I've always been the rainmaker in my firm. And I'm the person who, tries to get out and meet people wherever it is, um, and bring in business. But bankruptcy business, I truly enjoy because I know that I can do something for the people that I represent that they can't
Hmm.
necessarily do for themselves. And I can get them a good, successful outcome and a leg up and a fresh start. And I think that's priceless to some degree. So how do we bring in the business? How do we get our foot in the door? Because really, for me, it's always just been about getting my foot in the door. If I can get them to talk to me for a few minutes, I can parlay that to the next meeting, to the next conversation, and so on and so forth. And the other thing that I think everybody out there probably already knows, but should always be reminded, is that clients go stale. You know, if you wait too long, they forget who you are. They forget that they saw your name. They forget all the things that you said to them on the phone, no matter how much charm you gave them and no matter how much you can do for them. You know, it doesn't take very long for their attention span to lapse and for them to say, you know what, I still need a bankruptcy attorney and I can't remember that guy's name. I'm just going to, go through the old Rolodex and I'm going to look again. Oh, I'm sorry, Attorney Rosenberg, you didn't call fast enough, or we didn't hear back from you within the next 30 minutes after we spoke with you, and we just kept moving on. And, that
Right.
will happen. I mean, everybody's attention span's a little bit different, but you have to be able to measure your client to some degree and see what it is that they're looking for. And also, you have to be able to answer questions outside of bankruptcy because it touches on every part of a person's life. And so having a wider background, having a greater breadth of knowledge has always been incredibly useful and helpful. And because of my background in comparative religion, when I was a professor teaching, religious studies, I found, my father always says, that was a big waste of money. What did you think you were going to get with that? You didn't even finish the PhD. And I said, well, I had to make some other choices, Dad. But believe it or not, it all factors into what I do today. I think that no matter what background a person comes from, whether they're religious, atheist, agnostic, I think that there is something to the history of the culture, of all of it, that they're always going to bring to the table whatever they believe. And if you can speak to a person in a way that they can understand it, or at least they feel that they're being understood, you have a much greater chance of forming the foundations for a good working relationship. And that's what this is all about. And usually at that first meeting, I have no more concerns. I don't think, OC, when's the last time we had an in-person consult or an hour-long consult virtually where the person just disappeared afterwards? I don't think it happens. It doesn't.
Very rare. Yeah, it rarely ever happens. If we can get them in the room, if we can give them 5 minutes, 10 minutes on the phone and have them start talking about what their issue is, and Max can talk to them about how he can relate to it and how he knows how to fix it, and how what they're feeling and their emotions behind it are valid, and he's there to guide us, and our team is there to guide them and hold their hand through the process. It's very rare that someone who's qualified for a bankruptcy won't sign up with us.
I want to be clear too. It's not about pandering at all. I legitimately, sincerely want to connect with these people. I want to connect with them in a way that makes sense. So
good. So we're going to kind of unpack this process that you guys have built together that is leading to such outcomes that we have described. But before I do that, I would imagine that once we unpack this process, we're really going to discover that a huge reason this is going on is because of your beautiful wife as well, Ozzy, for joining you in the firm too. So, Ozzy, how did Max convince you to join hands with him in this bankruptcy endeavor?
Well, not all that difficult. Well, since
by the way, nice background there for the fireside chat.
Well, I mean, it was a fireside chat. I mean, I have to give
credit.
Right, I have to give credit where credit's due, but there's a window behind me, so I figured this was better.
I can touch my wall.
Yeah. All right. So
I oddly feel warm by her fire. I don't know, that's weird.
So when we decided to open our own practice, because before we were in business, before we had a law firm, I was in television production, and I worked with Linda Ellerby, and I met Walter Cronkite and Christiane Amanpour, like all these awesome people, when we moved out of New York and into Connecticut, I didn't want to make commercials. Like, that's not what I wanted to do. So when we opened up the law firm, I became the office manager, which is a fairly common story for husband and wives opening a business. And we started working. We had a 3-month-old infant at the time, and was working from my house with the cat and the infant, and on the couch, crying most nights because I had no idea what I was doing, because I had not trained in any legal thing at all, other than living through him going through law school and actually scoring better on the practice test of the bar than he did in one section. But that's kind of all I knew about law. And
they got rid of logic games on the bar exam. OC, you wouldn't be able to do that today, I don't think.
I wouldn't be able to do that today anyway. My brain doesn't work that way anymore. Anyway, so I started off in doing the real estate closings and managing the office and doing real estate closings. A couple of years after doing that, Max learned bankruptcy, and we really he really got really good at bringing in those clients for bankruptcy, and then it was a matter of just continuing the flow. Watching Max do his conversations with his clients is like every time is like a master class in conversationalism. Not for nothing, but it's a gift. It really is the gift of gab. He's the kind of guy that, and we joke about it all the time, because I would send him down to the corner to pick up the lunch from the corner market over here, and there's no one walking, right? It's dead of winter, nobody's walking, and he comes back with lunch and 3 clients.
This may be the only reason why my mother-in-law really likes me, I think.
And so it really is. It's just about, I feel like it's just about connecting with people on any level that is authentic. And that's why I think he succeeds on these leads. And I think that's why he succeeded in getting a judgeship, because he didn't mention, I don't think, that he is elected probate judge in his 2nd term in Stratford. So, he has the tactics that he's telling you work if you're authentic about them. And it's a gift, really. So that's how I feel. And he keeps me laughing every day we laugh, so it's fun.
That was one of my vows to you. I promised at our wedding I would keep you laughing. We met swing dancing in New York City, by the way. We're like the last couple from our group of friends that did not meet online or through some sort of dating service. I stole her. She was on a date. But I'm a better dancer than that guy was.
That's true. Yeah.
So listen, before I go any further, I do want to mention it. I have certain unique tools and assets that do help. And OC mentioned one of them. It doesn't hurt to be able to be known as the judge in Stratford. Not every one of the people that I'm talking to is aware of that, but usually when they look you up, and they will look you up if they're smart, they find a little bit about your background. I happen to be the most reviewed bankruptcy attorney, I think, in Connecticut. I made a big point of getting all of my clients, everybody I represented, to continuously make sure that they were going to put up reviews. And it still doesn't seem like enough or that many to me, but the competition really just, in my opinion, drops the ball and doesn't really. Is anybody here from Connecticut? I'd hate to be giving all this advice to my competition, but yeah, the competition really. They don't do it. They have some reviews, enough to show something, 20 here, 15 here. I got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of bankruptcy reviews at this point, all the way back to 2004, 2003. And, I've done a lot of other areas of law. So some of those other areas crop up in some of those reviews, also talking about the great job I did for this closing, or this great divorce I did, or this corporate litigation thing, or the yacht club that I sued. Things like that pop up. But for the most part, it's almost always people talking about how I got them a fresh start, how I helped them through the process with compassion, and I educated them on it, and I'm a handholder, and I don't make them feel like a number. In my state, I don't know what it's like in all of your states, but the bankruptcy attorneys who are doing the most business and the best business are usually not the people that talk to the clients at the beginning or at the end, and hardly at all in the middle. And they're hardly even the ones doing the business, I think. I think maybe they're the ones who show up at the 341, maybe. I think most of those senior partners actually hire junior associates to even do the 341s now. And they're, it's a paralegal who's doing all of the drafting, and it's a secretary who's collecting all of the documents. And I'm not saying this is bad, because God knows I'm trying to level up, and I'm trying to figure out a way to manage to have more business as I'm able to, as Unbundled is feeding me more leads and I'm closing more and more and more leads. I realize I've built myself an untenable situation if I'm not willing to compromise in certain ways. Now, I'm not going to compromise on the ways that have made me successful. And it's going to be an interesting balance. And I want to do a quick shout out to Chris Pankey over there. I see you sitting there. That beautiful man with his goatee over there. He's been a good inspiration to me as well. And talking through what we do here once a month or so, and sometimes more frequent, sometimes once every couple of weeks, just to check in. But we talked about this. I think Chris and I were the ones who first had this conversation that kind of made me realize that I'm going to have to make a few concessions in drafting some of this. But as far as bringing in the business and as far as making sure that it stays personal, I can't let go of that. And also, I should mention that I have an enormous amount of healthy paranoia and OCD, which probably makes me brutal to be married to. Sorry, OC. But
it does, in fact, yeah.
It makes me a great bankruptcy attorney because I'm incredibly detail-oriented. I'm not going to miss a trick. I'm not going to let any of this fall through the cracks because I'm too scared and paranoid and OCD about all of it. And I'm constantly on that, if you can't tell. I need more coffee right now, but I'm not going to get it. It's just me.
Fair enough. All right. So I'm going to walk you guys through a few questions just to kind of walk through, kind of get an image of the process you guys have put into place and see if we can flesh out some of the keys to that consultation, which is, there's two elements of this. How do you make sure we're getting these folks, on the phone consistently? They're getting a lot of calls from a lot of different people. So we're all trying to get them on the phone too. So we have to have a method by which we kind of cut through that and can get that consultation going with the client. And then, how do we approach that consultation so that with, the way in which we relate to the client, as well as the service options we offer and how we get them started and so forth, that enables them to be able to move forward with your services as often as they are. And so I'll ask those questions. We'll go through some of those details, and then we're going to open it up for questions to any of the other unbundled attorneys that are on this call so that you can get your questions answered as well. If you do have questions, you can put them in the chat, and then that'll kind of help prioritize some of the questions when we do get to the open Q&A here in a few minutes. So Max, maybe we could just kind of start just to image the flow a little bit. Leads are coming in, you guys are getting notified, you got a new lead, and either through the mobile app or through the online account, or through the email notifications or the text message, all the different notification methods. And maybe just walk us through, how, obviously the live transfers that come in, you can, answer those, but maybe just walk us through how you initially engage with, having those folks get on a call with y'all. And then we can kind of walk through some of the keys to making that consultation work so well.
Sure. I hardly get any of the live transfers anymore. There was a time where there were more of them, but now it's like I don't get any of the live transfers. It's probably just a function of when the people are contacting me. The worst ones are the ones that contact you in the middle of the night, and I'll explain why in a moment. I know he's already probably laughing thinking about it, but my biggest push is to contact them within 5 seconds of the alert tone on my phone. 5 seconds. That's the most I want to pass between hearing the blip and me calling them up, because the amount of times that I have absolutely stunned and absolutely awed one of these leads is just, I can't count it. It's too many times to count. And OC and I always have a good laugh at how shocked the people are. That first they think that I'm a computer. They think that I must be some sort of automated service. And so, of course, I immediately tell them a joke. I use their name. I make sure that they know that I'm really there and I'm not AI. I know it's a really weird world that I have to say this.
And they still don't know that. No,
they still sometimes they still have questions. But pretty quickly they realize that I'm there, and I explain to them that this is part of how I operate and that this is what separates me from all the other attorneys out there. And the other thing is I call them usually, no matter where I am, I call them from my cell phone first, and I make sure they recognize that this is my private personal cell phone. And unlike any of the other attorneys in Connecticut, I give those clients my cell phone so that if they spin out and they're having a panic attack and it's 8 o'clock at night and it's after business hours, they'll be able to call me and I will talk them off the ledge. I will calm them down. It is something that I've done many, many times, and I don't mind doing it. It usually doesn't take too much time, and you'd be shocked how few clients actually really end up needing it so much. But to know that they've got a safety net is everything. It means the difference between having a client and not having a client sometimes. So I call within as the moment I hear it, I try to beat my time every single time. The only unfortunate thing is I have a very specific alert tone that I thought was very signature just to me until I was sitting with my father the other day, and he uses the same tone for every email he gets. So the tone just kept going off, and I keep pulling up my phone, looking at him, going, "Where's the lead? Where's the lead?" And he looks at me and goes, "That's my email." My dad's got a very gruff voice and a mustache. It doesn't necessarily come through when I impersonate him.
And honestly, there's always that conversation when it's 10:30 at night and the lead comes in and he turns to me and he's like, do I call? Is it too late? Is it too late to call? And I'm like, yeah, but you're gonna, so just do it.
Pamela, I got documents. I can't talk right now because I'm with Unbundled. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Like that. It's very easy. I always answer the phone whenever I can. And, she's grateful. That was an unbundled lead, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I always make sure I try to do
that. Was the full consultation right there, by the way.
Right there. That's it. I just got a client. Yes. You just saw it. That's Pamela. She's now a client.
They've already hired you now.
She's just signing right now. No.
Okay. So you do the initial call, and then let's say they don't answer or you don't get a hold of them straight away. I mean, obviously calling them that quickly is going to have a very high contact rate within that period of time because they're still on the website. They're right there. They just made the request. They're already getting the inbound call. And then if that doesn't occur, do you guys have like a text message, email? Do you have a follow-up process that you'll typically run from there to engage with clients if they don't initially respond?
Yes. I haven't figured out a way to do any kind of automated text response or anything like that yet. And I don't know that I would, but it's something. We have. No, I don't. Maybe you do.
You don't. I do.
You do that subsequent to me. So after 5 seconds after I've tried making the call, if I can't get them on the phone, the very first thing I do is I text them and I write, this is Attorney Max Rosenberg. You contacted me through the Unbundled Attorneys Network. 5 seconds ago, you pressed a button on the screen asking for bankruptcy assistance. I'm the attorney that has been sent to you to help you. And I know that this is fast, but if you have a few minutes to talk, I'm happy to answer some questions now. Or if you'd like to converse later, you can text me a time that would work best for you. And then I give my office number, and then I say, I'm going to follow up with an email. And then I shoot out an email also, something similar. But I want to make sure that they have the text, because right now they're just receiving a call from a cell phone. And even though it's been 5 seconds since they pressed that button on Unbundled screen, most people, I'd say 2 out of 3 people are not going to pick up the phone for a phone number that they don't recognize, even if they did just request assistance. So maybe
especially if they just requested assistance.
Right. So 1 in 3 will pick up,
Mm-hmm.
but 2 out of 3, I have to work a little bit harder. The texting is absolutely imperative. It really does get me there. I would say emails have worked to bridge the gap on a handful of occasions, and I'm grateful for that. But I do go a little bit beyond the call of duty, and I go the extra mile. So if I really can't reach a person, and I usually wait a couple days after, I would probably text every single day after I call, once in the morning, once in the evening if I can't get a hold of them. And I definitely would use the office number too. Multiple numbers helps, especially once you've already given them both numbers by text. They should be able to recognize it. But believe it or not, occasionally they will block one of the numbers because nobody wants to get these calls. And, these people are being inundated with calls by their debt collectors and creditors already. So it's not that surprising. So the email will sometimes come through. But if that doesn't work, I have resorted to adding them on Facebook or LinkedIn and connecting with them through Facebook Messenger or LinkedIn, if that will work, whatever way, just so that they can see that I am serious, I'm real, I'm not a function of some website, because you're going to find me everywhere. And if I can get them to even look me up for just a second, if they will just type my name into a browser, they'll see who I am and what I'm about. And
I saw some of your eyebrows raised. Yes, it does give off a very creepy
stuff. Oh yeah.
Absolutely, it does, but it works.
It was a hard pill to swallow at first, and I never did this before, folks. This is an unbundled thing only that I do. You're questioning my methods. I understand. I question them too. And if we don't have a little bit of doubt, faith without doubt is nothing but death. I think Emmanuel de Unamuno wrote that, some Mexican poet, brilliant guy. I believe that in all aspects of that. And what I will tell you is it works. And because it works, I don't care that it feels a little bit creepy. And I asked, I said, did this feel creepy? No, you found me, you got me, I needed your help. I'm just grateful. And then some of these people, still add me on Facebook, even if they don't do the bankruptcy. And I've gotten personal injuries and I've got contract cases and other things subsequently later, because that's just weird karma, I suppose. Yeah, no, you are spending, no offense, Dave, and anybody else with Unbundled, these are really, really expensive leads. And you need to make sure that you're doing what you can to justify spending this kind of money. Now, on the converse, I want to make sure I mention this. And Dave, I don't want to go too far or say something I'm not allowed to say. Can I mention other lead services? I won't mention them by name, but I will tell you this. I have worked with OC. How many lead services over the last 20 years have we tried working with? So many. I can name them all. They all sucked. Excuse me. They were inadequate.
Terrible.
The leads were fake. The leads were generated
by Glenn Ross over there. Yeah.
So many of the leads were just garbage leads, and you're still paying a lot of money, nowhere near as much as I pay for Unbundled, but it adds up and they're not real. So it's much, much more. I'd rather pay more for a legitimate lead and have an opportunity like I do here than I would with, something that rhymes with Schmeindlaw. Right, one of those other ones. Yeah. And they all continuously contact me, every one of them. And I always say, listen, I worked with you guys. I know what you guys are about. And if I can't close one lead in a 5-month period or a 3-month period from you guys, it doesn't say anything about me. It says everything about you, because there was one other lead service, only one ever, that worked out really great. They disappeared when they were bought out by the monster that bought up. Yeah, I don't need to name names. You all know who
Internet brands bought them out. Yeah.
Right. So they were great. And I think leads were, this is back in 2008, 2007.
They were great leads back then.
They were great. They were wonderful.
The company was called Total Attorneys. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Total Attorneys.
They were run by Kevin Shern, and we owe them actually a lot of debt of gratitude, because they were the ones that fought the good fight for pay per lead to become an accepted form of advertising through lead generation. And I will speak to this kind of like the conversion model and why the leads are priced this way. I mean, we've always from the very beginning focused on bringing in the highest converting lead, which means it's really somebody that's specifically searching to hire a bankruptcy attorney. And the thesis of that is we really try to focus in bringing clients that are serious about hiring a bankruptcy attorney, because the biggest cost or the biggest consideration when it comes to attorneys is time, right? Especially when attorneys are billing what they do and so forth. And so if we can save time in terms of the amount of clients that an attorney has to talk to in order to get an enrollment, then that ultimately is going to calculate to more business, more time to run the practice, and ultimately just less frustration having to kind of filter through a lot of clients that are just simply not qualified to be considered to be a lead.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you guys you're doing that initial like real-time call whenever possible. You're calling them twice a day from there, morning and evening, with text messages to combine. I'm not sure if you guys have like a calendaring system built into that with a link or anything.
So we use Clio for our pipeline. Clio Grow. I can add add a link in the thing to show if anyone was interested in it. And it provides like a pipeline situation for any kind of incoming lead. And you guys are actually integrated in there for our Clio Grow. And then in that, once a lead comes in, the next, not in the middle of the night, because I don't work at midnight if I don't have to. But in the morning, I'll import that lead into Grow, and if Max hasn't contacted them, I've created a schedule of text and emails that will bother them for 2 weeks, every day for 2 weeks, and then I do once a week, and then once a month, for a year. I have it scheduled for a year. And it just says, hey, we're trying to reach you. We're trying to help you. Hey, we're trying to reach out and answer your questions. And when we can, we don't have to use it often, because Max actually gets a hold of most of the people. But in that email, it gives, very basic basic, we're trying to reach you because you asked for help. We're here for you. We're, your unbundled attorney. We're, local to you. We want to help. And all of the emails that go to them, sometimes they'll see them, sometimes they won't. I have had people contact us from that. So it's been successful on multiple occasions. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, I got a call from Max, and it's been like a week and I wasn't able to connect with him again because, I'm not answering my phone, right? They're not answering the phone. But I got the email and let's set something up. What's your next earliest available? So those email follow-ups are really important. So I would say from this conversation to, as a breakdown, call, text, call. Take 5 minutes during your lunch or whenever you're on social media, look them up, find them on social media, connect with them any way that you can. And then follow up. If you still don't reach them, follow up with daily calls twice a day and a email and text follow up through a system that does it automatically. And then it's less stress for you when it's automatically just happening.
Yeah. A lot of it seems.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say a lot of it seems difficult at first, and you really are training yourself towards a different type of lifestyle and bringing in the business and building it. The results make it worthwhile and make it very obvious to see that it works, and I'm going to continue doing it. If I can find ways to improve it further, I will. But I'm very happy that all these leads, they're all real people, and it gives me, you have a fighting chance. You got a real shot. You don't have to question, how ridiculous is this lead going to be, like we were so used to with so many other lead services. I think one of the things that really gives us the perspective is how much experience we had with trying so many different ways to bring in the business. I mean, we're in Connecticut, so it's a small state relatively, and our area is the entirety of the state. Well, that's another issue. A lot of people have problems. If they're 2 hours away, they're asking us, why would we want to go with an attorney who's 2 hours away when we could pick somebody who's 5 minutes outside the door? And so you have to be able to also, this is once you've actually gotten the correspondence going or the dialogue started, you need to be able to sell yourself in a way that makes sense for them. And distance is always a big issue. But in our world, the bankruptcy world, so much of our practice is done virtually. Our 341 hearings are virtual now. I try to explain that this entire process can be run virtually. And while before COVID, I never had represented anybody that I had not been in a room with, I would have to say, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bankruptcies now I have started and brought to completion and continue to work with these people. And I've never actually been in the same town with them at any point in all of that. But that's one of the hurdles, the distance issue. So
knowing what kind of hurdles they're going to bring up, why they can't do it. They don't have enough money to pay for an attorney. They don't have, we're too far away. We're not, they don't understand what they don't understand, and they make these assumptions over to push. They made a great decision in asking for help, and now their brain is telling them, I don't need help. I'm good. I don't need help. That was a mistake. That was impulsive. And it's Max's job and the firm's job, this whole team's job, is to reassure them that they asked for help for a reason. Let's take a look and see what that reason is. And if the help is really needed, we're there to get them across that finish line. And distance has always been one of the top things that sometimes the distance is that we're too far. Sometimes the distance is we're too close. Right. And it's, there's someone who is like, no, I don't want, your people are going to know because I'm talking to you. People are going to know. And we're like, listen, we don't just do bankruptcy. We do personal injury. We do contracts. We do a whole bunch of other things. Nobody needs to know we don't talk to anyone about anything. And so distance, for far away, you have Zoom, you have Teams, you have you can do it by phone, all of these different methods of talking to someone without them even having to leave their house. So if they don't have a car, which happens often, where they don't have, or they're in between, they're at lunch, at work, and that's the only time that they can speak, it's never an issue because we can always do Zoom or phone calls or whatever. And their
Well, this is
hearings,
really important.
yeah, their hearings
No,
are all
it's
virtual.
right.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
it's a really important consideration because I think a lot of the attorneys we've worked with, especially in most states, bankruptcy is probably the most conducive practice area to be able to serve a large region, a large like geographical region, primarily because the hearings are being handled by bankruptcy district courts or divisions, and usually in a given state there might be one, two, three, maximum four. I think California has four districts, and so these courts, if they were going to be in person, would be in only a specific place. So
Right.
but so it makes it such that like being able to cover those, if assuming the representation was required to be in person, would only be requiring nodes in those specific locations where the courts are, versus trying to cover an entire state for family law. You got to have representation, taken care of for the entire state, right? Because it's county by county by county. That being said, overcoming or helping educate the client in such a way where they have that initial reaction, oh, you're so far away, that means that's not good. That means I don't think I can get help. That means I should try to find someone local. They might not even comprehend the fact that they might be located way out there, but the court's actually here, right? And if I was going to have to go to court, you'd want to hire the person nearby the court, not where you're at, because otherwise you're paying somebody to come, right? So, for
Right.
example, there's a lot of different ways to kind of like help them better understand. So maybe you could just briefly go through some of the things that you would say to somebody that would have a concern about the distance from where your office is to where they are, and kind of talk them through. And you've already been speaking to a little bit in terms of like how you operate virtually and so forth, how you might help them understand how you're still well suited to service them.
So you touched on a couple things right there by saying that you want an attorney near the court, you want an attorney geographically located to some sort of node. What I would mention is that I'm always telling my clients you want an attorney who doesn't just know the law and is detail oriented, but you want an attorney who knows the trustees. My state, because it's small, we have probably about 5 to 6 trustees at any given time who are handling Chapter 7s. There's probably 2 handling Fairfield County, 2 handling New Haven County, 2 handling Hartford. And those are the big areas right there. And the 2 big meeting rooms that used to exist before COVID were New Haven and Hartford. And then for 13s, you had Bridgeport. So we were always traveling to those 3 locations, which can be a drag if you're all the way in Bridgeport and you're traveling all the way to Hartford, which is about an hour and a half away, depending on traffic. That eats up a good portion of your day, 3 hours round trip. I love being able to tell my clients, you don't have to leave the privacy of your own home. You can do this from your own room, at your own home, at your own pace, in a way that will make you comfortable. Even your court hearing, I'll be logging in from my courtroom. You'll be logging in from wherever you want. And if you feel uncomfortable with the technology, doesn't matter where in the state they are, the one time that they may want to travel, you can travel to my office. OC will sit with you while I'm over in my other office, and we'll guide you through this whole thing. And I'm going to be walking you through this whole process. And I always prep them, always make sure they're prepped, far in advance, and then also the day before, so that they know what the questions are and how they can best answer those questions.
Okay, wonderful. So maybe we could just get into some of the other. So that's really helpful, especially when you said, who knows the trustees, because that's not something that the client would expect.
Nobody thinks
They
about
go,
it until
oh,
they
you're
do.
you're supposed to know the trustees. Oh, I didn't actually realize that was even a consideration point for the bankruptcy attorney I should be hiring. Okay, I'm listening, right? So you kind of like, there's a bit of a shock, shock there to like, oh, I didn't understand that would be something to be aware. And so you have their attention by saying the most important consideration here is around knowing the trustees, for example. And then also then you can list a few other things to kind of help them better understand what really is the primary considerations for how you do work with a bankruptcy attorney. I would imagine as well, one of the things that I've noticed as you've been working with Chris, your dedicated support attorney, is just the way in which you help people get started with a bankruptcy in terms of like the service options, like the ways in which you allow clients to start for, I think on the last note I saw you had someone pay $75 to get rolling, right? So maybe you could just talk a little bit about, how do we get into that consultation? What are some of the kind of main things that you attend to in the early and mid parts of the consultation? And then also just speak to what is required financially for a client to get started, and then how do you structure the payment plan from there, and then we can take some questions.
Okay, so I do, for years and years, I would go through my checklist of questions right off the top of my head. And then one day, I don't know, maybe 15, 10 years ago, I said, I'm going to go senile someday, or I'm going to get more forgetful. I better write all of the checklist down. And if somebody's ever going to cover for me, they'll be able to run a consult also. So I do have, a kind of circle, click off the box type checklist that I wrote for myself. That's about 2 pages. And I go through a few of the more important questions on that first 5-minute phone call when I get them on the phone, just to make sure this is a good fit and that they qualify. And then in the hour consult, and it's always an hour-long consult, we go through the whole list of questions. I try to make enough time that I can pull a credit report to see just how much of this is actual and how much the client doesn't understand their own finances. And then I spend a good 5 minutes. Yeah, there's a checklist right there that Osie's holding up. I spend 5 minutes verbally preparing them for the retainer agreement that they're going to receive in the email. And I always tell them, it's 6 pages. Only the first 2 pages are the actual contract. The other 4 pages are pages that are to inform them certain things and to cover my own liability. And folks, never, ever forget, at the back of your brain, you always have to have the CYA monitor running. You always have to remember that someday, somewhere, 1 out of 100, 1 out of 500 is going to say, he never told me this. This never happened. I don't remember being asked if I had a criminal record or am party to a criminal matter at the moment. And Osie's laughing because
just 2 days ago.
I hadn't had this one come up before. And this one unbundled lady, fascinating case study, because I told her she can get comfortable. She can be at her own home. And she got so comfortable that we got her into the 341 meeting on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. And we couldn't see. She says, my video's not working. And we practiced Zoom ahead of time to make sure she could do Zoom. And we said, I don't know. It looks like the video's working. Are you in a room without the lights on? She goes, yeah. I go, well, of course it's not working. You're in pitch black darkness. You're in your bedroom. So I go, can you please turn on a lamp? And this is already, we're in the middle of the 341. Luckily, I'm good
on the record.
The trustee. And the trustee's laughing. And so she turns on the lamp and she's face down on her bed. She's very, very Zoftic, Rubenesque woman, naked, buck naked. And she, after about 30 seconds, it felt like an eternity, maybe she realized that she was buck naked. And the trustee, to her credit, just kind of looked away, smiled, just kept asking questions. I mean, I love this trustee. I love Kara Reach. She's one of the greatest. All the trustees in Connecticut, by the way, are really, really solid characters. They each have their own little peccadillos. And there's one that maybe is just, he can't wait till his career is over, you get the feeling. But otherwise, they're really, really great people. And I connect with them on a really nice level. This trustee, she didn't even want to talk about it. The other people you're watching in the Brady Bunch boxes like we are in right now, as they're reacting. And then suddenly I caught sight of my own little box and I saw my face and I clammed up fast because my face looked like this. And I quickly was like, and put the eyes back in your head, Max. And I said, and I didn't know, I didn't want to draw attention, but within a few seconds, she realized and she tilted her camera up. So all you could see was the top of her lip and her face up. And then, of course, she went and answered all of the questions differently than she had in previous run-throughs. And she, of course, was a criminal with a criminal record and was party to a case at the very moment. And of course, I, afterwards had to amend her file and notice the victim and so on and so forth. But believe it or not, the case actually is finishing up fine. There's no problem. But I mean, you will end up with people who you think you may have a handle on, and sometimes you just can't predict that kind of craziness, that kind of insanity. Sometimes you get a lead and you can tell almost immediately the person is certifiable. And usually it comes through when they say, when I got out of this facility, or I'm conserved currently, is that going to be an issue? Yeah, it's kind of an issue. Things like that may pop up. Unbundled has been generous in that if my lead is somebody who's non-compos mentis, I believe that they have given me credits. So I appreciate
was
that.
only
Thank you,
that
guys.
once, so.
It was once. It
Okay,
was
so,
once for,
so you guys run through the checklist, and then once you kind of establish, okay, this person's qualified for BK, then how do you then kind of figure out how to kind of get them started and then over the line in terms of getting them enrolled for services from there?
So what we do, Max, if I may.
Nope.
Yeah, once Max gets them on the phone, he transfers them over. Either if the office is open, I'll go to the front desk. If we're at home, I'm already, he answered the phone. They're having a conversation. My computer's already open, and I am going to have to schedule this person. So we get them scheduled for their first available, and we most always bend over backwards to make that first available for them happen. So if we have to, adjust a lunch or adjust something else, we will if we can, or we'll find that same day another time. Most of our bankruptcy clients from Unbundled have been very flexible on their time. So the sooner the better, so they don't change their mind. We do ask them to pay $150 for their initial consult. We start with $350 and say, we know, and it is an initial consult fee that gets credited towards moving forward.
Towards the attorney fee.
Towards the attorney fee. So it is their first payment. So they're paying for the hour with the attorney, which usually is an hour and a half with Max, because you
No, it's an hour. I'm good. I got it down to
and yeah, all right, sure. And then moving forward after that is a payment plan to their like whatever they can afford. But we'll talk about that in a second. So we
their
get
own
them
frequency, their own budget. I don't want to be a source of financial burden for them. They're already dealing with that.
Right. So if the reason we don't enjoy doing free consults, and a lot of our competition do free consults, and we have not gotten leads because, well, there's the one we sometimes they say, well, I can't afford that, and we're like, listen, that's okay. Tell me a little bit about the credit cards that you're paying, a little bit about what else you're paying that you can't afford it because you're working, you're making this, because they've already told us all this. So, and they're like, well, we pay such and such with it. And well, look, that's double what we're asking for. And at the end of the day, you're not going to pay that this month because you're going to be filing a bankruptcy soon. So don't pay them, pay us, and fix your life, and that's pretty much what we're doing. If you don't get that first payment at the consult, they're not invested in moving forward. They don't have any skin in the game. They're not valuing anything but that dollar. Their time doesn't matter. Our time certainly doesn't matter to them. So if they put their skin in the game, they're more likely to sign up.
So it's kind of in a way that it's like a hybrid between it's a consult fee, but on the other hand, it's also kind of like a first payment investment.
Exactly.
And that's after, like, you probably talk to them for 5-10 minutes or so by the time they then make that. So you kind of do a free consult, sort of, which is kind of an intake.
An assessment. We call it a phone assessment. Yeah, you get it. Everyone gets a free phone assessment.
Right. Okay. So there's your free phone assessment to make sure that you qualify for bankruptcy. Talk to them a little about what needs to be done and so forth. And then, okay, here's your first step is to spend an hour with the attorney and kind of get this process rolling. It's this amount for that hour, and then that's your first payment, or that can be also applied to the full fee. So in essence, it becomes kind of like the first payment towards the BK.
Right. And to Max's credit and to his fault, he is honest to a T with the people. So if they're hesitant to move forward because of the 150, he'll tell them flat out, listen, you clicked on a button and when you click on that button, it costs me money. And because it costs me money, I want to get you in and get you the best service that you can get, because I know I can give you the best service, but I want to at least recover my cost. And it's, what, it actually works for a lot of people because that's something they relate to.
They understand.
They understand that because you're running a business, and we tell them we're not highbrow. We're not like untouchable attorneys, right? We're not like this high level, thing. We're humans and we're people just like them trying to struggle through. We got the kids and the dogs and the house to pay for and the lights to turn on. And we express that to them. Max expresses that to them when he has that initial conversation, if there's hesitation because of an initial consult fee. And telling them, listen, I paid for your lead. They know that you paid for their lead. They don't think about it, but when you say it, they're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. because they wouldn't get you otherwise. How did they get that? How would
Mm-hmm.
how would Unbundled even be out there if you didn't have
It
us?
says it actually on the website.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not a secret,
You're
but
not
it's
reading
not something
anything.
people are willing to
I know
talk
they're
about.
not. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not something people are willing to talk about and say. So when you say that to them, you're doing a couple things. One, you're being honest with them, and that is something very rare these days, just in general. But you're also showing them that your vulnerability and that you're also just trying to help, but you also need to make ends meet, and that's relatable.
You got to build the web presence. I want to stress that one more time, because if you have landing sites, a YouTube video, you've got a web presence, so that, yeah, you're a voice on the phone and you can be charming, but when they look you up, they need to be able to find something of substance. And there are so many attorneys out there, and there's so many free ways that you could have a profile, and they don't take advantage of some of these easy free things that you can do on the internet, just so that people see that you are a legitimate person in a legitimate place, and that you're not some fly-by-night operation like some debt consolidator that's going to take 20% of the majority of your debt before they even start making deals to pay you out. And that is, by the way, another tool in your tool bag that you need to make sure they're aware of. Because if you're doing bankruptcy like I am, all of these people are talking to debt negotiators and debt consolidators, and almost every single time they're out of California. And no offense to any of you attorneys or people who are in California, but California is the hotbed where all of these scams and fraudulent companies are coming out of. And if you're in Connecticut, how are you going to go after a company in California when they take your money, give you no results, and then say, oh, well, we just didn't get to that point in the contract. You must not have read the fine print, where we keep the first 20% and we don't start doing anything until you've paid in $20,000 of the $100,000 debt that you owe. Then we'll start working after that. So you explain to them that you want to work with an attorney no matter what, even if it's not me. You want an attorney because we have liability, and we're always covering our butts, and we're always making sure that we're not doing something wrong. We're not going anywhere. And we have accountability, which is even more important for them to understand than liability. The accountability means that they have recourse. You know, they can go to the Bar Association, they can go to the AG, they can do something, and they can cause you harm. They can't do that to Five Lakes.
I wouldn't have.
Did I say that out loud? Oops.
There was a question.
Jack's laughing. I got Jack.
There's a question in the chat about if your first screening call is free, how do you describe or market the purpose of the second 150 consult? That's a great question. You need to meet them twice. You have to have two conversations. The first one is overwhelming to them. No matter what is said on that consult, you don't know if it's true. You don't know if it's real. They didn't hear a word you said. They just feel comforted.
And you're throwing a lot of information at them really fast, because you only have 3 minutes to get their attention, to get in, get out, and be done, because you don't want to oversell. Overselling is just as bad as not selling. Right.
So the first consult, the screening call is not for them. It's for you to know that it's a legitimate lead that can file, if they're even close to being able to file. And they're a person that you'd be willing to have a second conversation with. That's the first consult. The second, and then you tell them on that call, listen, take the time, look me up, take the time, and between now and when we meet, come up with questions, and we're going to sit down and we're going to go through all of your assets, all of your income. We'll go through your means test. We'll pull your credit report, and you're going to spend an hour. We're going to spend an hour in my office or on Zoom or however, and we're going to delve into all of your options. So it's not even necessarily going to end up in a bankruptcy, chapter 7 or 13 or whatever they're looking for. It's finding out, especially if they're hesitant about filing, it's finding out what other options are out there. So that's how we sell the payment for the consult. It's an hour consult with an attorney, super cheap. And they can ask any question that they want. Like it's not like only ask me bankruptcy questions,
We actually, I know a lot of attorneys feel uncomfortable with this, but we actually, I've had a lot of unbundled leads have said, hey, can I bring my brother? Can I bring my uncle? Can I have somebody else with me? And I always say, yeah, I don't have a problem having an audience. So I had a consult through Unbundled last week, and This one was the weirdest one. I thought I was in The Shining. I felt like I was Danny Torrance walking through The Shining, and they were identical twin women, and they're middle-aged, big curly red hair, but you couldn't really see them that well because they were in a darkly lit, dim room with things over the lights. And so you're kind of peering at the Zoom meeting, because it's a Zoom meeting, of course. I think they're probably shut-ins. They don't want to leave. They don't want to go anywhere. They've spent their entire lives together. They're 56 or so. They own the house together. All of their finances are together, and they don't go anywhere, or they don't work because they're both disabled in some way. I don't know what it is. But every answer that I asked for, every question I gave them, they answered in unison. And I tried to trip them up to try to get them, on different footing. So bizarre. It was in stereo. I'm trying to remember why I'm telling you this. Why was I telling this quick anecdote?
It has to do with it.
Consult.
Yeah,
I don't know. We were talking about consults. I don't know.
Well, having people come from an audience, right? So you're sharing, like, people can come. You've got the full hour with that attorney, right? No matter what.
The upshot was I got the unbundled lead signed up, but not before I got the twin sister first. So the twin sister was more sold. She signed up. She wasn't an unbundled lead. She just was the tag along, right? And then after I had her for about 3 to maybe a week, she got her other sister, who was the unbundled lead, to eventually also sign up because it was working out and it looked really good for them. And now they're trying to get me to set them up because they're lonely, which was that's not on my website.
That's a whole other conversation.
I'm not a Yenta.
Yeah, that's more in the religious studies. No.
I don't know about that either, but yeah, I'm just saying.
Maybe the comedy.
There
are
levels of weirdness to this anecdote that you will not get to hear today. But if anybody contacts me,
but if you want to set up a consult if you want to set up a consult to discuss this, we can do that.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. So last thing I want to cover, and then we can take some live questions for the call here, is so once you get through and they pay that, you do the full evaluation, talk about through the different options, and they're like, okay, the Bankruptcy is the best fit. Just talk through how you structure payment plans and how you kind of get them moving forward. Sure. And also wait till they pay the full amount or not. Like maybe just talk through how you structure those.
No, you have to wait till you're paid
moving forward the Bankruptcy.
If you're doing bankruptcy, you don't file before you get. On rare occasions, 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 times over the last 15 years have we filed without getting the full fee. And I will tell you, every single time that I've done that, you get jilted. You get screwed out of the rest of your fee. And even if it's you got the noblest of intentions, I did it for one guy to save his house because he had 3 small kids and he was a single dad. And he just really, really did not respect, or he just abused us after that.
He had no
value to it. Structure. You guys do kind of like a weekly, bi-weekly debit card, bank draft. So, how do they make those payments?
So what we tell our clients really is that we're not trying to be a financial burden. We're trying to be a financial solution. So this is our fee is our fee, and the cost is the cost, and they agree to it when they sign the retainer, and now how they're going to pay it is completely and totally up to them. We can set up payment plans that debit card payments or e-checks to automatically come out of their account, or they can come in and pay, whether or not, and we ask them how they intend to make the payment, and they never know, right? So my next question to them is, when do you want to be filed by? When do you want this to be done and over? And they're like, well, I'm in foreclosure, so I have 3 months before, I'm going to lose my house. I'm like, all right, well, that's a pretty hard deadline. You need to be paid in full at least a week before that deadline. And maybe we can help you get a way to extend it if you need more time, but that's your deadline before your house gets foreclosed, before the sale happens or the law day passes. And so we work backwards. Like, well, if you were to pay weekly or monthly, this is how much it would be. Can you make it happen? And they're like, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. And they borrow, and they, sometimes there's friends that pay for them. Sometimes they can absolutely afford it. Again, we tell them, you're not going to be paying your credit cards that you've been paying every month. You're not going to be paying all of these other bills that are going to get discharged. So, you're throwing good money after bad. Stop paying the credit card bills. If pay your car, pay your house, you don't want to lose those. Don't get your electricity shut off. But if it's not a secured debt of any kind, don't pay it because it's going away once you file. And it's really hard to get that concept out of people's heads. Like they don't understand. Turn off your automatic payments, turn off all that stuff. It's all going away when you file. So that has been, once they understand that, they are easier to make the payments. And we set them up on these payment plans. They get reminders if they're auto paying. If they're auto paying, it automatically comes up. They get an email receipt when it happens. 9 times out of 10, there's no issues with that. Sometimes also we tell them that they get, I'm sorry, they just finished the thought. They get text reminders and emails if they're on a self-pay payment plan. I set it up so that they, we send them a notice every time it's time to pay, so they don't forget. Because they're in this situation because they're not great with their finances, some of them, and that's we're there to help make it as easy as possible. My other point is we're flexible with our payment plans, and we tell them that if something happens and you're not able to pay that month or that week or whenever, call us, let us know, we'll move it, we'll change it, we'll adjust, because we don't want to be a burden. So that flexibility, and some of our clients have used it, like we can't, my car broke down, I have to pay for this, I can't pay you this week, I'm gonna pay you next week for it, can we switch it? Absolutely, 100%. We're on their side. We just want them to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So in our retainer agreement, we have a question, do you want a payment plan, on the first page, and then our last page is an idea of a payment plan, and it explains on that page, it explains why a payment plan is a good idea. That we want to help you get to the finish line of this so you can be debt free. To do that, you have to be paid in full. This plan helps us and you prepare for that day, right? So we know when you're going to be filing, so we can be prepared to help you the most we can help you, especially during that time. And when the documents need to be done by, like what documents you need to get us have to be based off of the date you're going to file. So if you're filing in November, that you need the 6 months of pay or the bank statements and all of that. So it's all about everything that we do with our leads and then our clients is to educate them about what we need, why we need it, and how it helps them. And that helps build that relationship also. And it's one of our selling points in our initial conversations. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. That's super helpful. I'm really glad that we could get to covering that. So I want to open it up for questions for those of you that are live here on this Fireside Chat. So in order to ask a question, you just need to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question. Maybe someone, if we both do it at the same time, we'll just have to decide who goes first. But anybody that has a question that would like to chime in on any aspect of the Bankruptcy practice or any questions you've had up to this point, please feel free to do so, because that's why we do these community events, to give you an opportunity to connect with each other. So if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute and say hello, and I'll spotlight you as well.
Max, Stephen asked a question in the chat about obtaining how you obtain original signatures on your documents, or if you obtain original signatures.
So electronic signatures are supposed to be as good as wet signatures in the bankruptcy world now, but of course that transition was slow because we had some very senior trustees who have since retired who did not understand when that happened, and we're still looking for wet signatures, even though it was no longer a requirement. Sometimes we would send the signature pages along with the whole petition by email, so the person could print out the signature pages, sign them, and send them back. Sometimes
we mail it with a self-addressed stamped envelope.
Right, so we do that too. I mean, that was years ago. All of our people now recognize that an electronic signature is just as good. Occasionally, they ask to see on the Zoom meeting the signed document, and the client will hold up a piece of paper. Usually, nobody's looking that closely. If it's signed electronically, that's good, and nobody's raising an eyebrow over not having an ink.
We've never had an issue. Also, before anything gets filed,
always an email,
a written confirmation that they read and reviewed, and that gets stored in their electronic file with us as well.
Yep. I always send out the email asking them 3 verbs specifically. Have you reviewed this? Are you satisfied with this? Do you authorize me to file? Reviewed, satisfied, authorized. And so I've got an email from every single debtor I've represented over the last 5 years or so that would have that backup.
Okay. Does that answer your question there, Stephen? Are you muted there, buddy? Oh, you did? Okay, good.
Yes, I got the information. We have trustees in Oklahoma that require a wet signature on the B-21 form.
Oh.
But they'll take electronic on other forms.
I'm surprised on the B-21 because all you really would have to be able to do is send in a copy of a social security card to really validate it, I would think. But I get it.
Yeah.
We have the attorney acknowledgement of identification, right?
Oh, we do. Yeah, I guess we have a protocol for that too, Steve.
But the attorney signs the affidavit.
Yeah, that's signed by me, that I've reviewed their social security information, I've looked at the card, and that it is accurate. And then we also send in the copy, obviously. So
yeah, we don't have to sign that. We send that copies, the social security photo ID, to the trustee, who then says, yeah, these are the people on the Zoom 341, and they identify them and by that photo ID. But it's, it is just one document. And I still meet with my client one time, or at least I try to. There's a few out of
good.
There's a few out of town.
I think it's important.
If you meet them in person, you should have them sign it on that initial meeting, because it's just an identification of their thing, right?
Yeah.
Well,
unless
actually,
I don't know.
My only meeting is at the time of signing their petition. Because I actually go over the petition with them, and make them verify that they've listed all their liabilities, et cetera, et cetera.
I like that.
But so generally it's just one meeting, but it's the time we file.
Yeah, so you do know the form. We have it as our last, it's the 6th page of our retainer package.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right.
We did such a good job covering everything. There's no questions.
Yeah,
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Wade.
Hey, Max. Thanks for doing this today. And I blame Dave for being busy for the first 20 or 30 minutes of this. I got to be honest. I was busy with a one-call close. Thanks, Dave. And
yes, sir.
Maybe you covered this. So maybe you covered this. So apologies in advance. But I'm interested in hearing about using contractors to sort of handle this. Do you currently use any of counsel or any other arrangement where either your overflow work or areas you don't want to hit, and they handle that?
So the last time I had anybody work as a contractor I was still doing bankruptcy in New York as well, because I started my practice in New York, and I wanted to make sure that I kept it going just enough, kept my toes dipped in the water a little bit. So I was doing Westchester because it's close enough that I could do Westchester bankruptcy work. But, eventually doing the 341 meetings in person was just a real drag driving, all the way there. So I found a contractor that, does per diems. And I would use this per diem contractor to do the 341s. And he actually worked out really, really excellently. But, there's something about it that felt disconnected. Like I told you guys at the beginning of this, I have enough paranoia and OCD that I have a great deal of difficulty letting any piece of it out of my hands with somebody that I don't know intrinsically. Just really that's why OC is my right hand and I'm hers. I trust her. I don't trust any of the other paralegals.
Yeah, but I'm left-handed, so him being my right hand doesn't help much.
But no, I don't use any contractors yet. I've been spending the last 3 weeks interviewing for the right specific bankruptcy paralegal, and I think I found somebody who does contract work by compartmentalized at per diem and compartmentalized stuff. So she'll charge a specific fee just to do the prep of a petition, a specific fee for each aspect of it. And I think I'm going to try this out.
Okay.
I'll give a little bit of a context, kind of anecdote of one of the attorneys we work with in California who was actually on this meeting for the first while here, and it looks like he had to jump off for something else. He handles 3 of the 4 districts in California. Has often serviced 10 to 15 bankruptcy leads a day. His process is somewhere around $150,000 a month in revenue and bankruptcy filings, something like that, quite often. And initially when we were looking at it, like, he was doing like 8 to 10 consults a day, and he was also doing some document preparation, and then also was doing appearances. And so the first kind of like thing that we addressed was he needed to get someone in to help with the drafting of the documents. And so the first key hire for him and his firm was to bring in a bankruptcy paralegal. So we worked on that. We ran some job ads and kind of brought him. We didn't. I mean, we helped him do the advertising for the position. He ended up finding a great bankruptcy paralegal, kind of onboarded him, trained him. Okay, great. So now he has someone that's helping him with the drafting of the petitions. The next layer there was around the appearances. And what we kind of figured out after doing some math on this as well is that, appearance networks and appearance attorneys or contract lawyers, he kind of got to know over the course of time. And he also kind of like made the evaluation of like, which are the more complicated bankruptcies that he feels he needs to be the one to do the representation on, and which are the ones that, are more than likely going to have a specific outcome if they have, a qualified bankruptcy attorney involved. And usually the appearances are, for appearance attorneys, $100 to $200 in California through the appearance networks. And so he found that even though the hearings themselves were sometimes only 30 minutes, an hour, sometimes longer if it would be more complex, but 30 minutes to 2 hours, let's say, by paying $100 to $200 to have an appearance attorney do that appearance, that opened up the opportunity to have 1, 2, or 3 more initial consultations with potential clients, and he would then retain 1 or 2 more clients, during that period of time. And so, yeah, he would pay $100 or $200, but he'd land another $1,500 bankruptcy or $3,500, $4,500 Chapter 13 out of the deal, right? So it really, for him at that point of scale, really had to do with, well, what's the best usage of my time? And one of the things that he found was, managing his team, and second of all, being the person that, speaks to each new lead and gets them enrolled for services, because that's, and that's been true for, all practice series all across the network. As we've always seen the most success when the kind of owner or managing attorney is the one that engages with the leads and ultimately signs them up, with few but very few exceptions. And so that's where he found to be the most valuable for his firm, is using his experience and his qualifications to connect with clients and get them signed on consistently and be kind of like the deal flow. And then, when cases were drafted and so forth, he'd review them before they get out the door and before they got filed. And then, making determinations on which one he would do appearances. But that's where he brought contract lawyers involved, was for the appearances for the 341 hearings. And that, again, freed him up to be able to do more consultations, bring in more deals. Paralegals would help out with the drafting and so forth. So that's certainly what we've seen. And he's not the only one that's kind of taken that direction. It's, usually the lowest hanging fruit is the drafting, and then it's the appearances from there. And so, those are some considerations on that front. Is that helpful, Wade, there?
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of the reason I was looking into this. I have zero background in bankruptcy, but I'm kind of interested in what's going on there. And the short of it is, I think sometime next year, if I feel comfortable with having that conversation with clients, then I may be interested in buying bankruptcy leads.
Sure. Yep. Thank you, Wade. Thanks for the question, man. And this is kind of like the journey that Max and Ozzy and also our support team has been working alongside you guys to help you find that paralegal first and get some help with the drafting side of things, because that's just taking a lot of time, and your time is valuable. And so to have someone be able to handle that opens up your time to be able to have more consultations, do more appearances, and then that next chapter, should you choose to go down that path, which not every attorney does, right? You might get to a certain point where you've got the right team in place and you just handle as many cases as you're comfortable to handle based upon, and with you representing each client all the way through the matter. And that's probably a next level of income from where you're at right now by getting the help you need on the drafting side. But then that next chapter is, if you want to be able to take on more cases even beyond that level, then the appearance attorneys can be an option for sure. I think the way that typically unfolds is, it's an interviewing process. You kind of get to know the attorneys. I think it makes a lot of sense. That it's like, hey, I really need to feel like I really trust these people. Trust comes from relationship, right? Trust comes from working with somebody for a period of time and getting to know, their experience, and also just getting to know them. And so sometimes I think one of the things that can really help is to start engaging in conversations with potential contract attorneys and meet them in person, get to know them, get to know their background, and then once you feel really comfortable on that front, send them one case, send them two, and gradually develop a working relationship. And that's where the trust can be forged, such that as a business owner, you can start to have some degree of confidence in having somebody else, be representing a client on your behalf in a court in 341. But we'll see. We may or may go down that path. All right. Any other questions for now? This has been a fantastic interview, and a lot has been shared. There's a lot to chew on. We've also recorded, and we'll pass it along to the entire network for you guys to be able to review as well. But one last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up.
Yeah, I don't know about a question, but a comment for sure. I did hear that you're contacting the prospects immediately, just as fast as you can when the lead comes in. I think you're exactly right. I get the same reaction with estate planning. My case is the same reaction. They're shocked to be speaking to an attorney within seconds, and it helps. I mean, the number of one-call closes that depend on it, they happen quite a bit. But I think there is something about it. The response rate in our industry, in whatever practice area you're in, is just awful. And so if you're getting to most of them straight away, it's a good surprise for them.
Wade, what state are you practicing in?
Texas mostly. We've got of counsel working in other states a little bit, testing the markets there, but Texas mostly, all over Texas. That's what I buy unbundled leads in every county in Texas.
Wow, very cool. Okay.
Estate planning, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're great.
Yeah, he was actually the guest. He was the guest on the last Fireside Chat, which is going to be released to the entire network here very shortly. So that was a fantastic interview. So if you guys want to check out how he's been able to build out an virtual estate planning firm across the state of Texas, and now has of counsels, that he's working with in other states as well. That'll be a really helpful interview for y'all.
And he's got that great baritone, somber voice that it resonates. Wade gets me.
That radio DJ voice.
I like the shirt. It's that little light lavender with matching tie. That's excellent. That's a royal color.
Thank you. I had some difficult hearings in court today, and I wanted to set some people at ease. I'm the probate. I do probate work. You guys have probate courts when you're doing
that's the ease tie right there.
Trust and estates. Do you guys have a probate court system in Texas?
Oh yeah, 99% of what I do is keep people out of it.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So today I had to do a change of code for a DNR, and I always feel miserable about doing those. So I wore something lighter and a little bit more,
Yeah, I like it. So it might go sideways, but at least I'm going to look good, huh?
Right, exactly. I'm signing somebody's warrant, some death warrant, but yeah.
Did Max say how many he takes each week? Can you guys hear me? Did Max say how many leads you take from Unbundled each week?
I didn't say that, but I think I probably get one a day, maybe 5 a week, 7 a week, something like that.
Something like that.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you everybody thanks you first and foremost to Max and Ozzy for jumping on here and sharing so just kindly and generously in terms of some of the things that have made the success thus far possible. I know it's going to be a very helpful resource for all the other attorneys that have been involved and that are on the chat, and also that are in the network as well. Bankruptcy is one of those practice areas that once you really get it down and get the process in place, can, like you said, can be very rewarding, because people are getting a fresh start and they're getting a new lease on their life. They're not getting the collector calls. They're getting an opportunity to build a new possibility for themselves and for their families. And also from a business standpoint, it is very, I guess I'll say, streamlinable, scalable in ways that some other practice areas are not. And so it can be very conducive for those that are trying to build business systems and want to scale something up. So, but with that in mind, thank you guys so much for sharing and for being here on this chat, and can't be more excited about what you guys have accomplished thus far and what you have ahead for the next chapters for the firm.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, is it all right if I give my information out to the people here so that if they have any questions for me afterwards, they can all contact me? Or if they ever need anybody in Connecticut, if you ever need anybody, my office number is 203 870-6700. And then you want to dial 3 when you hear OC's recorded voice. And my cell phone, my private cell phone is 203-521-4915. If I can ever help anybody with Connecticut stuff, by all means, or if you have questions about my experience with Unbundled, I'm happy to talk about it.
Thank you, Max. All right. So
Thank
with that,
you.
we'll go ahead and wrap up the Fireside Chat. And thanks to everyone that was here and asking questions, participating, taking good notes, and learning how to, apply these tips in your practice. And we'll look forward to seeing you all in the next Fireside Chat.
All right. Thank you,
Have a
everyone.
wonderful day, everybody. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay well.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Max. Thank you,
care.
Ozzy. Cheers, guys. For more information about how our exclusive Unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com. You can watch each new episode of the podcast on the Unbundled Attorney YouTube channel, or if you prefer to listen, you can find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And be sure to subscribe so you get each new episode as soon as it's available. And remember to leave us your review on iTunes. We read each and every one of them and really appreciate your support of the show. Once again, thanks for listening.